There are two places on Earth that, at first glance, look completely ordinary. One sits high above the planet, where the air is thin, the horizon stretches farther than it feels like it should, and the ground beneath your feet seems almost detached from everything below. The other is closer to sea level, where the air is heavier, denser, more familiar, where everything feels grounded, stable, exactly the way you expect the world to behave. If you stood in both places long enough, nothing obvious would happen. The sky wouldn't change color, your body wouldn't feel different in any dramatic way, your watch would continue ticking forward at the same steady pace it always has. There would be no visible signal, no sudden shift, nothing that would make you stop and think that something fundamental is happening beneath the surface. And yet, between these two places, something is not the same. Not distance, not temperature, not pressure, something far more subtle, something that doesn't leave a visible trace in the environment. It doesn't distort the landscape, it doesn't alter the way objects move in any noticeable way, and it doesn't create any kind of immediate, sensory difference that you can point to. But it is there, constantly, quietly. Time itself is passing differently, and the difference is not theoretical. It is not abstract. It is something that has been measured, tested, and confirmed over and over again, using instruments precise enough to detect variations so small that they exist entirely outside human perception. Two places, one planet, same reality, and yet not the same time. To understand what this actually means, it helps to imagine something simple: two identical clocks, perfectly synchronized, placed in two different locations. One is positioned high above the Earth, somewhere elevated, removed slightly from the surface. The other remains closer to sea level, deeper within the planet's gravitational influence. At the moment they are synchronized, they show exactly the same time. Every second ticks forward in perfect alignment, each movement of their hands mirroring the other with absolute precision. But as time passes, something begins to happen. Not visibly, not in a way you would notice if you were casually checking them, but slowly, consistently, one clock begins to drift. Its seconds stretch ever so slightly compared to the other. The difference is incredibly small, fractions of a second, far beyond what human perception can track in real time. And yet, if you leave them long enough, and then bring them back together, the difference becomes undeniable. They no longer agree. One has experienced more time than the other. Now imagine that instead of clocks, it's everything. Every process, every chemical reaction, every biological function, every thought, every moment of experience, all of it tied to the passage of time, all of it moving at a slightly different rate depending on where it exists. Not because something is broken, not because something went wrong, but because time itself is not fixed. And this is where the idea shifts from something interesting to something much more unsettling, because this is not happening somewhere far away, or under extreme conditions that you'll never encounter. It is happening here. It is happening right now. Every moment you spend at one altitude instead of another, every time you move through different gravitational conditions, even slightly, the rate at which time passes for you changes. The difference is small, almost insignificant on a human scale, but it is real, measurable, and constant. Which means that time is not something you move through uniformly. It is something that adjusts around you, something that responds to where you are and how you exist within the structure of the world. And by the end of this video, what you'll start to see is that time is not the stable, consistent background you've always assumed it to be. To understand why this happens, you have to stop thinking of gravity as just a force pulling objects downward and start thinking of it as something that reshapes the structure of reality itself. A useful way to visualize this is to imagine a stretched surface, like a tightly pulled sheet. If you place a heavy object in the center, the surface doesn't just hold it, it bends around it. The fabric curves, creating a kind of depression that changes the way everything else moves across it. Now imagine that this surface isn't just space, but space and time combined into a single structure. Not separate layers, not independent systems, but one continuous fabric that defines how reality behaves. When something with mass, like the Earth, exists within this structure, it doesn't just sit there, it curves the fabric around it. And that curvature affects not only the movement of objects through space, but the flow of time itself. Closer to the mass, where the curvature is stronger, time slows down slightly. Further away, where the curvature is weaker, time moves a little faster. It's not that clocks malfunction, it's that time itself is behaving differently depending on the shape of the space it's embedded in. Another way to think about it is like a river. Imagine time as a current flowing steadily forward. In some areas, the river narrows and the flow slows, in others, it widens and the flow speeds up. If you were moving along with the current, everything would feel normal from your perspective. You wouldn't notice the difference in speed because everything around you would be moving with you. But from an outside perspective, the difference would be clear. This is what's happening with time on Earth. The closer you are to the center of the planet, the stronger the gravitational effect, the more the flow of time is slightly reduced. The further away you are, the less influence gravity has, and the faster time moves relative to those deeper within it. This isn't just a concept. It has been tested in real-world conditions with extraordinary precision. Clocks placed at higher altitudes, even just on mountains, tick faster than identical clocks at sea level. The difference is tiny, but consistent enough that with the right instruments, it becomes undeniable. And the effect becomes even more pronounced when you leave the surface of the Earth entirely. Satellites orbiting the planet exist further away from its gravitational influence, and as a result, time for them moves faster compared to clocks on the ground. This isn't just theoretical, it's something that has to be corrected constantly for systems like GPS to function properly. Without accounting for these differences, the system would quickly drift out of alignment, leading to errors that would grow larger with every passing moment. Even airplanes experience this effect. Highly precise clocks flown around the world have been compared to those left on the ground, and when they return, they no longer match. The difference is small, but real, confirming that movement through different gravitational conditions alters the passage of time. So this is not an abstract idea hidden in equations. It is something that has been observed, measured, and built into the systems we rely on every day. Despite all of this, you don't feel it. There is no moment where you suddenly become aware that time is moving differently for you. There is no sensation that tells you that your experience of reality is slightly out of sync with someone else in a different location. The reason for that is scale. The differences are incredibly small, far below the threshold of human perception. Your brain operates on patterns and relative changes. It detects contrast, movement, differences that are large enough to matter in a practical sense. But when everything around you, including your own thoughts, your own body, and every process you experience, is moving together at the same slightly adjusted rate, there is nothing to compare it to. There is no reference point that would allow you to detect the shift. It's similar to watching a video where every frame is delayed by a fraction of a millisecond. If the entire sequence is shifted consistently, you won't notice the delay. But if you compare it to another version running at a different speed, the difference becomes clear. That's what's happening with time. Your experience is always internally consistent, even if it is not universally aligned. What this ultimately reveals is something deeper than just a scientific curiosity. Time is not a single, universal stream that everything moves through together. It is not a shared backdrop against which events unfold in perfect synchronization across the universe. It is local. It depends on where you are, how fast you're moving, and how gravity is shaping the space around you. It can stretch, compress, and shift, all while remaining completely invisible to the experience of the moment. Which means that right now, as you move through your day, as seconds pass and moments accumulate, the version of time you are experiencing is specific to your position in the world. There is no single clock governing everything. There are only local flows, subtle variations, and a reality that is far less fixed than it appears. I post videos that break down how reality actually works from your brain to your body to the world around you, so if that sounds interesting, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.